Hey, what's going on guys, Sensus here, and I've been getting a lot of requests to do a Rogue vs Warrior dueling guide, so I thought I'd just go ahead and make one. Now just keep in mind while you watch this that there is more than one method to defeat certain classes, so my method may differ from a method that you found worked well. Now before we get into the actual guide, I want to go over what I'm going to be talking about. Alright, so I'm going to start off by going over a viable spec and glyphs that you can use when dueling a warrior. After that, we're going to take a quick look at the defensive cooldowns for both rogues and warriors. And finally, we're going to get into the actual duels, where I'm going to talk about my opening rotation and my mindset when dueling a warrior. At the same time, I'm going to talk about what I could have done differently that could have shifted the outcome of the match, and just point out mistakes I made so you guys don't make the same ones. Alright, now that's pretty much it. Let's go ahead and get started. Alright, so starting off with the spec, you're going to want to spec into Subtlety, and you're going to want to pick up Subterfuge, Combat Readiness, Elusiveness, Shadow Step, Prey on the Weak, and Mark for Death. Now none of this is really negotiable if you plan on using the same method I did, but if you're uncomfortable with using Feint, you could spec out of Elusiveness and go into Cheat Death, but I personally don't recommend it. Alright, now that we got our spec down, we're going to take a quick look at a couple of viable glyph options. Now this is the one that I used. I used the glyph of Chief Shot, the glyph of Blind, and the glyph of Cloak of Shadows, and the reason why I spec'd into the glyph of Cloak of Shadows is to mitigate 40% of his physical damage for 5 seconds. And this actually can be used at the same time as Feint, so as long as you're spec'd into Elusiveness, you'll be able to get 70% damage mitigation for 5 seconds if you use them at the same time. Alright, now this is the second viable option. You could either glyph into the glyph of Cloak of Shadows, or you could pick up the glyph of Evasion in its place, which will increase the duration of your evasion for 5 seconds. It's really up to the player when it comes to whether they want either 40 to 70% damage mitigation, or an extra 5 seconds of 50% dodge chance. But overall, both are viable setups, so you can't really go wrong with either. Now let's take a look at a warrior and a rogue's defensive CDs. For warriors, they have Rallying Cry, which temporarily grants him 20% of maximum health for 10 seconds. Die by the Sword, which increases their parry chance by 100% and reduces all damage taken by 20% for 8 seconds. And Shield Wall, which reduces all damage taken by 40% for 12 seconds. And now for rogues, we have Evasion, which increases our dodge chance by 50% for 15 seconds or 20 seconds if glyphed. Cloak of Shadows, which instantly removes all existing harmful spell effects, grants immunity against magical damage and harmful effects, and then causes you to resist all spells for 5 seconds. But the only part that really matters here against the warrior would be when it's glyphed, it also provides 40% physical damage mitigation. And finally, Combat Readiness, which causes successive attacks to deal 10% less damage per application, stacks up to 5 times, and it lasts for 20 seconds, but if 10 seconds elapse without any incoming weapon strikes, the state will end. Alright, now that we know what each class is capable of when it comes to defensive CDs, let's get into some duels. Alright, now a key thing to keep in mind when versing a warrior is you're going to want to force defensive CDs as fast as possible, meaning you're going to want to open hard so you can get that pressure out as soon as possible. Now I'm going to pause the clip right here to talk about my opening rotation. As I said before, you're going to want to open hard to get as much early pressure out as possible to force CDs. And if you don't, you're probably going to lose. So my rotation for opening on a warrior is Cheap Shot into Rupture, and that automatically gives me a 30% extra damage increase with Prey on the Weak and Sanguinary Vein, and that combined with Master of Subtlety brings that 30% up to a 40%. Then I pop Shadow Dance and my PvP trinket, and I spam bush until 5 combo points, and I follow my Cheap Shot up with a Kidney Shot. I then continue to spam bush until 5 more combo points, and I finish it off with an Eviscerate, and it could make for a pretty devastating opener if done correctly. Alright, now let's see how devastating this opener can be. Alright, now in the opener alone, I was able to get him down to 25% without having to blow Shadow Blades, and that's really how you want to do it. I know I said that 2 times already, but it's all about getting that early pressure out. Alright, now I skipped ahead a little bit here just to talk about what I'm doing. Immediately after my opener, I popped Evasion to force Die by the Sword, and as soon as you see a warrior pop Die by the Sword, you're going to want to blind him, and if you can get a trinket on that blind from the warrior, you pretty much won the match. There's no coming back from that, so you always want to keep that in mind. Because all you have to do if you force a trinket on blind, you just gotta wait for your DRs to fall off and you pretty much won the match. I'll show you what happens if you force that trinket on a blind. Okay, so now before I show the full games, I want to go over some mistakes I made so you guys don't make the same ones. Right here I'm out of combat and I could have easily bandaged up, and right there the bleed fell off, so I could have easily gotten a full channel off, but I didn't for whatever reason, so that's just something to keep in mind. Especially for rogues at the moment, you always want to utilize any sort of heals you can get. In this next clip, I was hugging the pillars so I can get a re-stealth off, and what I could have done here is put down a smoke bomb and I would have gotten it off, but I didn't, and that cost me the match right here. So you always want to utilize smoke bomb, and that's definitely one important thing I could have done better with, because right here I could tell you what I could have done if I put down smoke bomb. I would have gotten the re-stealth off, and I could have opened hard with Shadow Dance and Trinket. My DRs were off, so I could have opened with Cheap Shot and done my rotation into a Kidney Shot, and since Bajir was floating at around 25 to 30% health at the end there, I think that would have been match. It's very important to keep these factors in mind because they could be the difference between winning or losing. Now before I play the full games, I just want to give you guys a couple tips on what to look out for when dueling a warrior. As soon as you see them pop Avatar and Recklessness, depending on the situation, you're going to want to either use Dismantle. That's pretty much your number one priority. You're going to want to try that first. If Dismantle's down, you're going to want to try to vanish and get away if you don't have a bleed on you. But if you do have a bleed on you, you're going to want to vanish and stay in stealth as long as possible and then reopen with Cheap Shot. But of course, if you're in an arena match and you have a bleed on you and you're versing a warrior and you popped Recklessness and Avatar, you could always just vanish and sprint away to the other side of the map or to the farthest pillar and just wait for his burst to fall off from there. Another thing to keep in mind is you can shadow step Heroic Leap, so always try to do that whenever you see a warrior Heroic Leap. Then they won't be able to Heroic Leap charge you. And that pretty much wraps it up. If you guys have any questions specifically when versing warriors, feel free to send me a message or leave a comment. And I'm going to play 2 of the games where I think best demonstrates the opener. As always, thanks for watching guys. Hope you enjoy.